Hello everyone, this is Saurabh from Edureka. In today's session, we'll focus on what is Puppet. So without any further ado, let us move forward and have a look at the agenda for today. First, we'll see why we need configuration management. What are the various problems that industries were facing before configuration management was introduced. After that, we'll understand what exactly is configuration management and we'll look at various configuration management tools. After that, we'll focus on Puppet and we'll see the Puppet architecture along with the various Puppet components. And finally, in our hands-on part, we'll learn how to deploy MySQL and PHP using Puppet. So I hope we all are clear with the agenda. Kindly give me a quick confirmation so that I can move forward. Alright, so Devon says yes. So does Mayank. Janice says yes. Jessica says looks great. Alright, thanks guys for the confirmation. So I'll move forward and we'll see what are the various problems before configuration management. So this is the first problem, guys. Let us understand this with an example. Suppose you are a system administrator and your job is to deploy MeanStack, say on 4 nodes. Alright, MeanStack is actually MongoDB, Enterprise, AngularJS and Node.js. So you need to deploy MeanStack on 4 nodes. That is not a big issue. You can manually deploy that on 4 nodes. But what happens when your infrastructure becomes huge? You may need to deploy the same MeanStack, say on hundreds of nodes. Now, how will you approach that task? You can't do it manually because if you do it manually, it'll take a lot of time. Plus, there will be wastage of resources. Along with that, there is a chance of human error. I mean, it increases the risk of human error. All right. So we'll take the same example forward and we'll see what are the other problems before configuration management. Now, this is the second problem, guys. So it's fine. Like you in the previous step, you have deployed MeanStack on hundreds of nodes manually. Now what happens? There's an updated version of MongoDB available and your organization wants to shift to that updated version. Now, how will you do that? You want to go to the updated version of MongoDB. So what you'll do, you'll actually go and manually update MongoDB on all the nodes in your infrastructure, right? So again, that will take a lot of time. But now what happens? That updated version of the software has certain glitches. Your company wants to roll back to the previous version of the software, which is MongoDB in this case. So you want to go back to the previous version. Now, how will you do that? Remember, you have not kept the historical record of MongoDB during the updating. I mean, you have updated MongoDB manually on all the nodes. You don't have the record of the previous version of MongoDB. So what you need to do, you need to go and manually reinstall MongoDB on all the nodes. So rollback was a very painful task. I mean, it used to take a lot of time. Alright, so we have a question from Mayank. He's asking, before configuration management, there was no rollback? No, Mayank, that was not the case. But what happens, rollback before configuration management used to take a lot of time. Alright, and nowadays things happens in real time. Suppose you have an e-commerce website and you have updated a software which is not working fine. So you want to go back to the previous version and it is taking time. But at the same time, you cannot afford any downtime in your website because that might lead to a huge loss of money and the faithful customers that you have, you might lose them. I hope this answers your question, Mayank. Alright, so Mayank says yes. So any other questions, guys? Alright, so I'll move forward and we'll take the same example forward and we'll see what are the other problems before configuration management. Now this is the third problem, guys. Over here what happens, you have updated MongoDB in the previous step on say development environment and in the testing environment, but when we talk about the production environment, they're still using the previous version of MongoDB. Now what happens, there might be certain applications that work that are not compatible with the previous version of MongoDB, alright? So what happens, developers write a code and that works fine in his own environment or be it his own laptop. After that, it works fine till testing as well. Now when it reaches production, since they're using the older version of MongoDB, which is not compatible with the application that developers have built, so it won't work properly. There might be certain functions which won't work properly in the production environment. So there is an inconsistency in the computing environment due to which the application might work in the development environment, but in product it is not working properly. So any questions still here, guys? We have gone through the 3 problems that were there before configuration management. If you have any doubts, any queries, please write it down in your chat box. Devon says no question. Mayank says no questions. Ajay says please move forward. So does Jessica. All right. Thanks, guys. So now what I'll do, I'll move forward and I'll tell you how important configuration management is with the help of a use case. So configuration management at New York Stock Exchange. All right. This is the best example of configuration management that I can think of. What happened? A software glitch prevented the New York Stock Exchange from trading stocks for almost 90 minutes. This led to millions of dollars of loss. A new software installation caused the problem. The software was installed on 8 of its 20 trading terminals and the system was tested out the night before. However, in the morning it failed to operate properly on the 8 terminals. So there was a need to switch back to the old software. You might think that this was a failure of New York Stock Exchange's configuration management process, but in reality, it was a success. As a result of proper configuration management process, NYSE recovered from that situation in 90 minutes, which was pretty fast, let me tell you guys. Had the problem continued longer, the consequences would have been more severe. So because of proper configuration management, New York Stock Exchange prevented loss of millions of dollars. They were able to roll back to the previous version of the software within 90 minutes. Alright, so Vineet has a question. He's asking which configuration management tool they used at NYSE. NYSE achieved configuration management with the help of Puppet, and this is mentioned in Wikipedia as far as I know. They might be using other tools along with Puppet, but in Wikipedia it is mentioned that they are using Puppet to achieve configuration management. Alright, so Vineet says thanks. Okay, so Devon has a question. He's asking two CM tools at the same time can be used. Definitely, Devon, you can use more than one tool depending on your infrastructure, depending on the kind of environment, depending on your infrastructure need, basically. If your organization requires more than one tool, definitely you can do that as well. All right, so are there any doubts, any questions, guys? Please write it down in a chat box. All right, Devon says no question. Sandeep says no. All right, fine, guys. Thanks for the confirmation. So we'll move forward and we'll see what exactly configuration management is. So what is configuration management? Configuration management is basically a process that helps you to manage changes in your infrastructure in a more systematic and structured way. If you're updating a software, you keep a record of what all things you have updated, what all changes you are making in your infrastructure, all those things. And how you achieve configuration management? You achieve that with the help of a very important concept called infrastructure as code. Now, what is infrastructure as code? Infrastructure as code simply means that you're writing code for your infrastructure. Let us refer the diagram that is present in front of your screen. Now what happens? In infrastructure as code, you write the code for your infrastructure in one central location. You can call it a server, you can call it a master, or whatever you want to call it, alright? Now that code is deployed onto the dev environment, test environment, and the product environment. Basically your entire infrastructure, alright? Whatever nodes you want to configure, you configure that with the help of that one central location. So let us take an example, alright? Suppose you want to deploy Apache Tomcat, say on all of your nodes. So what you'll do, in one location, you'll write the code to install Apache Tomcat, and then you'll push that onto the nodes which you want to configure. What are the advantages you get here? First of all, the first problem, if you can recall, that configuring large infrastructure was a very hectic job. But because of configuration management, it becomes very easy. How it becomes easy? You just need to write the code in one central location and replicate that on hundreds of nodes. It is that easy. You don't need to go and manually install or update a software on all the nodes. All right. Now the second problem was you cannot roll back to the previous stable version in time. But what happens here, since you have everything well documented in the central location, rolling back to the previous version was not a time consuming task. Now the third problem was there was a variation or inconsistency in various teams like dev team, test team, and product team. Like the environment, the computing environment was different in dev, test, and product. But with the help of infrastructure as code, what happens, all your three environments, that is dev, test, and product, have the same computing environment. So I hope we all are clear with what is configuration management and what is infrastructure as code. If you have any doubts, any queries, please write it down. Okay, Sebastian says yes. So does Sandeep. What about the others? Guys, it is a very important concept. If you have any questions, please write it down in your chat box. Fine. So shall I move forward? Just give me a confirmation. Okay, so Vineet has a question. He's asking, can you explain infrastructure as code again? Sure, Vineet, I'll do that. Now what happens in infrastructure as code? You write the code for your infrastructure in one central location. Infrastructure as code simply means that you're writing code for your infrastructure. Or you can say programmable infrastructure as well. Now what happens, you write the code for your infrastructure in one central location. Suppose you have written a code to install Apache Tomcat here, and you need to deploy that into the dev environment, test environment, and prod environment. So what you need to do, just write the code and push that onto the various nodes that you want to configure. All right. So you have everything well documented in your one central location. Vineet is asking, when infrastructure as code was not there, how was it done? At that time, Vineet, they were using scripts. I mean, system administrators were creating scripts and then they were deploying it onto the nodes at that time. But with infrastructure as code, you get a proper structure of writing those scripts. So it is not like if I have written that particular script, so only I can execute it or I can debug it. It has a proper structure, and with the help of configuration management tools, that structure is followed. So anyone who has a general knowledge of, who has a knowledge about that tool can actually configure the nodes, all right? Does that answer your question, Vineet? All right, so Vineet says thanks. So we'll move forward and we'll see what are the different type of configuration management approaches are there. Now there are two types of configuration management approaches. One is push configuration, another is pull configuration, all right? Let me tell you push configuration first. In push configuration, what happens, there's one centralized server and it has all the configurations inside it. If you want to configure certain amount of nodes, all right, say you want to configure 4 nodes as shown in the diagram. So what happens, you push those configurations onto these nodes. There are certain commands that you need to execute on that particular central location, and with the help of that command, those configurations which are present will be pushed onto the nodes. Now let us see what happens in pull configuration. In pull configuration, there is one centralized server, but it won't push all the configurations onto the nodes. What happens, nodes actually poll the central server at say 5 minutes or 10 minutes, basically at periodic intervals, all right? So it will poll the central server for the configurations, and after that it will pull the configurations that are there in the central server. So over here you don't need to execute any command. Nodes will automatically pull all the configurations that are there in the centralized server. And Puppet and Chef both uses pull configuration, but when you talk about push configuration, Ansible and SaltStack uses push configuration. So guys, any doubts with respect to push and pull configuration? Sandeep is asking, what is the use of polling? If you poll the central server at regular intervals, you get to know what all changes have been made in the centralized server. There might be certain new configurations present. For example, you have Tomcat 8 on all your nodes, and in the centralized server, you have written the configuration to update from Tomcat 8 to Tomcat 9. So nodes will poll the central server for the changes made in the configurations, and it will pull those changes and it will update from Tomcat 8 to Tomcat 9. So with the help of polling, they get to know what all changes are made in the centralized server. I hope this answers your question, Sandeep. All right, so Sandeep says yes. Okay, so Sandeep is asking, isn't push more efficient? That depends, Sandeep. That depends on the kind of infrastructure you have. There's a lot of debate happening around regarding push and pull configurations. People used to think that push configuration cannot be used for large infrastructure. But now with the help of Ansible and tools like SaltStack and all, they are actually able to configure the large infrastructure as well. So that totally depends on the kind of infrastructure that you have, the need of your organization. That depends on it. I hope this answers your question, Sandeep. Shall we move forward? Just give me a confirmation. All right, Sandeep says yes. Sebastian says yes. Mayank says yes. All right, cool guys. So I'll move forward and we'll look at various configuration management tools. So these are the 4 most widely adopted tools for configuration management. I've highlighted Puppet because in this session we are going to focus on Puppet, and it uses pull configuration. And when we talk about SaltStack, it uses push configuration. So does Ansible. Ansible also uses push configuration. Chef also uses the pull configuration. All right. So Puppet and Chef uses pull configuration, but Ansible and SaltStack uses push configuration. Now let us move forward and see what exactly Puppet is. All right, so Vineet has a question. He's asking which of these tools is the most popular. So Vineet, what happens since Puppet is there in the market since 2005, all right? So you can say it is the most well-established and the most mature tool that is there available for configuration management. But even Ansible is gaining popularity, and even Chef is mostly used because of the reason that it supports a major cloud platform, be it Azure, be it AWS. So major cloud platforms all are supported by Chef, and AWS has a component called OpsWork that uses Chef. But you can say that Puppet right now is the most mature and well-established tool. I hope this answers your question, Vineet. So shall I move forward, Vineet? Just give me a confirmation so that I can go on. All right, so Sebastian says yo. Mayank says clear. All right, fine. So I'll move forward and we'll look at what exactly Puppet is. So Puppet is basically a configuration management tool that is used to deploy a particular application, configure your nodes and manage your servers. Like they can possibly take your servers online and offline as required, configure them and deploy a certain package or an application onto the nodes, all right? With the help of Puppet, you can do that with ease. And the architecture that it uses is master-slave architecture. Let us understand this with an example. So this is Puppet master. Over here, all the configurations are present. And these are all the Puppet agents. All right. So these Puppet agents poll the central or the Puppet master at regular intervals. And whatever configurations are present, it will pull those configurations basically. So Sebastian has a question. He's asking how Puppet provides a failover capability for the master node. I mean, what if master goes down? How much downtime is there? All right. So let me tell you, Puppet is highly available. Let me tell you, it achieves high availability because it uses a multi-master architecture. So if your one master goes down, there's always a backup master or a secondary master to take its place. So you won't experience downtime ever. I hope this answers your question, Sebastian. All right. Thanks for the confirmation. So let us move forward and focus on the Puppet master-slave architecture. Now this is a Puppet master-slave architecture, guys. Over here what happens, the Puppet agent or the Puppet node sends facts to the Puppet master. And these facts are basically a key value data pair that represents some aspect of slave state. That aspect can be its IP address, uptime, operating system, or whether it's a virtual machine. And then Factor gathers those basic information about Puppet slave, such as hardware details, network settings, operating system, type and version, IP addresses, MAC addresses, all those things. Now these facts are then made available in Puppet Master's manifest as variables. Don't worry, I'll tell you about what exactly manifest is later in the session. Now Puppet Master uses those facts that it has received from the Puppet agent or the Puppet node to compile a catalog. That catalog defines how the slave should be configured. And the catalog is a document that describes the desired state for each resource that Puppet Master manages on a slave. So it is basically a compilation of all the resources that Puppet Master applies to a given slave, as well as the relationship between those resources. So the catalog is compiled by the Puppet Master and then it is sent back to the node. And then finally, slave provides data about how it has implemented that catalog and send back a report. So basically the node or the agent sends the report back that the configurations are complete and they can actually view that in the Puppet dashboard as well. Now what happens, the connection between the node or the Puppet agent and the Puppet master happens with the help of SSL, the secure encryption, all right? So if you have any doubts, any queries, please write it down, and in the next slide I'll tell you how this SSL connection actually happens. All right, so Devon wants me to repeat this master-slave architecture. Sure, I'll do it. So what happened, the Puppet agent or the Puppet node sends certain facts to the Puppet master. So facts are basically key value data pair that represents some aspects of slave state. It can be its IP address or uptime, operating system, or whether it's a virtual machine, all those things. Now what happens, the Puppet master, when receives those facts, it will compile a catalog. Now what is a catalog? A catalog describes the desired state of each managed resource on a slave. So it is basically a compilation of all the resources that the Puppet master applies to the given slave, as well as the relationship between those resources. So those compiled catalogs are then sent to the Puppet agent or the Puppet node. And after that, node sends back a report to the Puppet master stating that it has implemented the configuration successfully, and they can actually view that on the Puppet dashboard. So I hope you have understood the Puppet master-slave architecture, Devon. Alright, so Devon is asking, so all the configurations are written in catalog. Now let me tell you what happens. The facts that Puppet node or the Puppet agent sends to the Puppet master are made available as variables in the Puppet manifest. And actually Puppet master uses those facts to compile a catalog. Alright, and that catalog defines how the slave should be configured. So catalog is a document that describes the desired state for each resource that Puppet master manages on a slave. I hope this answers your question, Devon. Just give me a quick confirmation, Devon, so that I can move forward. So Devon is asking, how does it interact with Puppet manifest? As I've told you earlier as well, the Puppet agent of the node, the facts that it sends to the Puppet master are made available in the manifest as variables. And when we talk about the connection between the node and Puppet master, that happens with the help of SSL. which I'm going to tell you later in the session. So is that what you are asking, Devon? Because I was a little unclear about your question. So if you want a better answer, you can actually write a more detailed question if possible. All right, so Devon says it's okay. All right, guys. So we'll move forward and we'll see how actually the connection between the puppet master and puppet node happens. So this is how puppet master and slave connection happens. What happens, first of all, the puppet slave, it requests for the puppet master certificate. All right, it sends a request for the master certificate, and once puppet master receives that request, it will send the master certificate. And once puppet slave has received the master certificate, puppet master will again send a request to the slave regarding its own certificate. All right, so it will request for the puppet agent to send its own certificate. The puppet slave will generate its own certificate and send it to puppet master. Now what puppet master has to do? Puppet master has to sign that certificate. All right. So once it has signed the certificate, puppet slave can actually request for the data. All right, or the configurations. And then finally puppet master will send those configurations onto the puppet slave. This is how puppet master and slave communicates. Now let me show you practically how this happens. I have installed puppet master and puppet slave on my CentOS machines. All right, I'm using two virtual machines, one for puppet master and another for puppet slave. So let us move forward and execute this practically. All right, so Sebastian has a question. He's asking how will slave knows that puppet master has signed the certificate. All right, what happens once puppet slave sends its own certificate, puppet master signs it. Then there is a command that you need to execute on puppet slave, which will fetch whatever updates have happened in the puppet master. I'll show you practically how this is done, Sebastian, so your questions will be answered there, over there itself. Now this is my puppet master virtual machine. Over here I've already created a puppet master certificate, but there is no puppet agent certificate right now. And how will you confirm that? There's a command that is puppet cert list, and it will display all the certificates that are pending in puppet master. I mean that are pending for the approval from the master. All right. So currently there are no certificates available. So what I'll do, I'll go to my puppet agent and I'll fetch the puppet master certificate which I've generated earlier, and at the same time generate the puppet agent certificate and send it to master for signing it. So this is my puppet agent virtual machine. Now over here, as I've told you earlier as well, I'll generate a puppet agent certificate and at the same time I'll fetch the puppet master certificate, and that agent certificate will be sent to puppet master and it will sign that puppet agent certificate. So let us proceed with that. So for that I'll type puppet agent -t, and here we go. Alright, so it is creating a new SSL key for the puppet agent, as you can see in the logs itself. So it has sent a certificate request, and this is the fingerprint for that. So exiting, no certificate found, and wait for cert is disabled. So what I need to do is I need to go back to my puppet master virtual machine and assign this particular certificate that is generated by puppet agent. Now over here, if you want to see the list of certificates, what you need to do, you need to type puppet cert list. I have told you earlier as well. So let us see what all certificates are there now. So as you can see that there is a certificate that has been sent by puppet agent. All right, so I need to sign this particular certificate. So for that, what I'll do, I'll type puppet cert sign and the name of the certificate, that is puppet agent, and here we go. So it has successfully signed the certificate that was requested by puppet agent. Now what I'll do, I'll go back to my puppet agent virtual image, and over there I'll update the changes that have been made in the puppet master. Alright, so Sebastian is asking, do we have to perform these steps for each agent? Yeah, Sebastian, you have to perform these steps for the agents that you want to configure. He's asking because I think it would take a lot of time if you have 100 nodes cluster. So what you can do, you can actually use certain scripts in order to do that. All right, so you can deploy those scripts, and yeah, he's asking can we use scripts? Definitely you can do that, and you can use those scripts in order to add multiple nodes to your puppet master. So I hope this answers your question. All right, cool. So I'll go back to the puppet agent and I'll update it with the changes made in the puppet master. Let me first clear my terminal, and now again I'll type puppet agent -t. Alright, so we have successfully established a secure connection between puppet master and puppet agent. So any questions still here, guys? Before I go back to the slides, if you have any doubts, you can ask me. Alright, fine guys. So I'll go back to the slides and we'll proceed from there. Now let me give you a quick recap of what we have discussed till now. First, we saw what were the various problems before configuration management. We focused on three major problems that were there. Alright, and after that we saw how important configuration management is with the help of a use case of New York Stock Exchange. And finally, we saw what exactly configuration management is and what do you mean by infrastructure as code. We also looked at various configuration management tools, namely Chef, Puppet, Ansible, and SaltStack. And after that, we understood what exactly Puppet is and what is the master-slave architecture that it has and how Puppet Master and Puppet Slave communicates. So till here, if you have any doubts, you can ask me, guys. All right, so Sebastian says, no doubts, roll on yo. All right, Sebastian. Sandeep says no doubts. So does Devon, Janice, Jessica. So thanks for the interaction, guys. I think you all are enjoying the session. So if you think that I'm going a bit fast or I'm a bit slow, you can just write it down in your chat box. All right, so I'll move forward and we'll see what use case I have for you today. So what we are going to do in today's session, we are going to deploy MySQL and PHP using Puppet. So for that, what I'll do, I'll first download the predefined modules for MySQL and PHP that are there in the Puppet Forge, all right? Those modules will actually define the two classes, that is PHP and MySQL. Now, you cannot deploy the class directly onto the nodes. So what you need to do when you in Puppet manifest, you need to declare those classes. Whatever class you have defined, you need to declare those classes. I'll tell you what are manifest modules, so you don't need to worry about that. I'm just giving you a general overview of what we are going to do in today's session. So you just need to declare those two classes, that is PHP and MySQL, and finally just deploy that onto the nodes. It is that simple, guys. So any questions you have, you can ask me right now regarding the use case. So as you can see that there will be a code for PHP and MySQL, and from that Puppet master, it will be deployed onto the nodes or the Puppet agents. So any questions, guys? Any doubts you have, or shall I move forward? Fine. So we'll move forward and we'll see what are the various phases in which we'll be implementing the use case. All right. So first we'll define classes. All right. Classes are nothing but the collection of various resources. How we'll do that? We'll do that with the help of modules. We'll actually download a module from the Puppet Forge and we'll use that module that defines two classes, as I've told you, PHP and MySQL. And then I'm going to declare that class in the manifest and finally deploy that onto the nodes. All right. So let us move forward, and before actually doing this, it is very important for you to understand certain basics of Puppet, like code basics of Puppet, like what are classes, resources, manifest, modules, all those things. So we'll move forward and understand those things one by one. Now what happens is, first of all, I'll explain you resources, classes, manifests and modules separately. But before that, let me just give you an overview of what are these things, all right? How do they work together? So what happens, there are certain resources, all right? A user is a resource, a file is a resource, basically anything that is there can be considered as a resource. So multiple resources actually combine together to form a class. So now this class, you can declare it in any of the manifests that you want. You can declare it in multiple manifests. All right. And then finally, you can bundle all these manifests together to form a module. Now, let me tell you guys, it is not mandatory that you will combine the resources and define a class. You can actually deploy the resources directly. It is a good practice if you combine the resources in the form of classes, because it becomes easier for you to manage. The same goes for manifests as well. And I'll tell you how to do that as well. You can write a Puppet code and deploy that onto the nodes. And at the same time, it is not necessary for you to bundle the manifest that you're using in the form of modules. But if you do that, it becomes more manageable and it becomes more structured, all right? So it becomes easier for you to handle multiple manifests. All right, so let us move forward and have a look at what exactly are resources and what are classes in Puppet. Now, what are resources? Anything that is there is a resource. A user is a resource. As I've told you, a file can be a resource. Basically, anything that is there can be considered as a resource. So Puppet code is composed primarily of resource declarations. A resource describes something about the state of the system. It can be such as a certain user or a file should exist or a package should be installed. Now here we have the syntax of the resource, all right? First you write the type of the resource, then you give a name to it in the single quotes and various attributes that you want to define. In the example, I've shown you that it will create a file that is inetd.conf, and this attribute will make sure that it is present. So let us execute this practically, guys. I'll again go back to my CentOS virtual machine. Now over here, what I'll do, I'll use the gedit editor. You can use whatever editor you want. And I'll type the path for my manifest directory. And in this directory, I'll define a file, all right, and with the .pp extension. So I'll just name it as a site.pp. And here we go. Now over here, the resource example that I've shown you in the slide, I'll just write the same example and let us see what happens. File, open the braces. Now give the path etc/inetd.conf colon and now I'm going to write the attributes. So I'm going to make sure that it is present. Ensure that the file is created. etc inetd.conf comma and then now close the braces. Save it and close it. Now what you need to do, you need to go to the Puppet agent once more, and over there I'm going to execute agent-t command that will update the changes made in the Puppet master. Now over here I'll use the Puppet agent-t command and let us see if the file inetd.conf is created or not. Alright, so it has done it successfully. Now what I'll do, just to confirm that, I'll use ls command. For that I'll type ls etc inetd.conf, and as you can see that it has been created. Alright, so we have understood what exactly a resource is in Puppet, right? So now let us see what are classes. Classes are nothing but the group of resources. Alright, so you group multiple resources together to form one single class, and you can declare that class in multiple manifests as we have seen earlier. It has a syntax. Let us see. First you need to write class, then give a name to that class, open the braces, write the code in the body, and then close the braces. It's very simple, and it is pretty much similar to the other coding languages that you if you have come across any other coding languages, it is pretty much similar to the class that you define over there as well. Alright, so we have a question from Mayank. He's asking, can you specify what exactly the difference between a resource and a class? Mayank, as I've told you earlier as well, a resource is basically anything like file, user, anything basically. Classes are actually nothing but the bundle of resources, alright? All those resources grouped together forms a class. And what you can say is a resource describes a single file or a package, but what happens, a class describes everything needed to configure an entire service or an application. I hope this answers your question. Alright guys, so we'll move forward and we'll see what are manifest. So this is Puppet manifest. Now what exactly it is, every slave has got its configuration details in Puppet master, and it is written in the native Puppet language. These details are written in the language that Puppet can understand, and that language is termed as manifest. So Sebastian was asking me what exactly manifest is. So this is manifest. All the Puppet programs are basically termed as manifest. So for example, you can write a manifest in Puppet master that creates a file and installs Apache server on Puppet slaves connected to the Puppet master. Alright, so you can see I've given you an example. Over here it uses a class that is called Apache, and this class is defined with the help of predefined modules that are there in Puppet Forge, and then various attributes like define the virtual host and the port and the root directory. So basically there are two ways to actually declare a class in Puppet manifest. Either you can just write include and the name of the class, or you can, if you don't want to use the default attributes of that class, you can make the changes in that by using this particular syntax. That is, you write the class, open the braces and the class name, colon, whatever changes or whatever the attributes that you want apart from the one which are there in by default, and then finally close the braces. Alright, so any doubts still here guys, please write it down in your chat box. Alright, Sandeep says no doubt, so does Devon, Mayank, Janice, Sebastian says all good yo. So now I'll execute a manifest practically that will install Apache on my nodes. Alright, Now I need to deploy Apache using Puppet, alright? So what I need to do, I need to write the code to deploy Apache in the manifest directory. I've already created a file with .pp extension, if you can remember when I was talking about resources, right? So now again I'll use the same file, that is site.pp, and I'll write the code to deploy Apache, alright? So what I'll do, I'll use the gedit editor. You can use whatever editor you feel like, etc, Puppet, manifest, and site.pp, and here we go. Now over here I'll just delete the resource that I've defined here. I like my screen to be nice and clean. And now I'll write the code to deploy Apache. So for that I'll type package httpd colon. Now I need to ensure it is installed. So for that I'll type ensure installed, give a comma. Now I need to start this Apache service. So for that I'll type service httpd ensure running through a comma. Now close the braces. Just save it and close it. Let me clear my terminal. And now what I'll do, I'll go to my Puppet agent. From there it will pull the configurations that are present in my Puppet master. Now what happens, periodically Puppet agent actually pulls the configuration from Puppet master, and it is around 30 minutes, right? It takes around half an hour. After every half an hour, Puppet agent pulls the configurations from Puppet master, right? So you can configure that as well. If you don't want to do it, just throw in a command puppet agent -t, and it will automatically pull the configurations that are present in the Puppet master. So for that I'll go to my Puppet agent virtual machine. Now over here what I'll do, I'll type a command puppet agent -t, and let us see what happens. So it is done now. Now what I'll do, just to confirm that, I'll open my browser, and over here I'll type the host name of my machine, which is localhost, and let us see if Apache is installed. Alright, so Apache has been successfully installed. Now let us go back to our slides and see what exactly modules are. If you have any doubts, any queries regarding manifest or any other concept that we have studied till now, you can ask me by writing down in the chat box. Any questions, any queries, guys? So shall I move forward? So Mayank says yes. Janice says looks great, please go on. Jessica says no questions. Ajay says no questions. Sandeep says no questions. So does Sebastian. Alright, thanks guys. Thank you all for the confirmation. Now I'll go back to my slides and we'll see what exactly modules are. So what are Puppet modules? Puppet module can be considered as a self-contained bundle of code and data. Let us put it in another way. We can say that Puppet module is a collection of manifests and data, such as facts, files, templates, etc. Alright, and they have a specific directory structure. Modules are basically used for organizing your Puppet code because they allow you to split your code into multiple manifests. So they provide you a proper structure in order to manage your manifest, because in real time you'll be having multiple manifests. To manage those manifests, it is always a good practice to bundle them together in the form of modules. So by default, Puppet modules are present in the directory /etc/puppet/modules. Whatever modules you download from Puppet Forge will be present in this module directory, alright? Even if you create your own modules, you have to create in this particular directory, that is /etc/puppet/modules. So now let us start the most awaited topic of today's session. That is deploying PHP and MySQL using Puppet. So what I'm going to do, I've told you earlier as well, but I'll just give you a quick recap. Now what I'm going to do is, I'm going to download the two modules. One is for PHP and another is for MySQL. So those two modules will actually define PHP and MySQL class for me. Now after that, I need to declare that class in the manifest, inside.pp file present in the Puppet manifest. So I'll declare that class in the manifest, and then finally I'll throw in a command puppet agent -t in my agent, and it will pull those configurations and PHP and MySQL will be deployed. So basically when you download a module, you are defining a class. You cannot directly deploy that class. You need to declare it in the manifest. And now I'll again go back to my CentOS box. Now over here what I'll do, I'll download the MySQL module from the Puppet Forge. So for that I'll type puppet module install puppet labs -. MySQL hyphen give the version name. So I will use 3.10.0 and here we go. So what is happening here? As you can see, it is saying preparing to install into /etc/puppet/modules, alright? So it will be installed in this directory. Apart from that, it is actually downloading this from the forgeapi.puppetlabs.com. So it is done now. That means we have successfully installed MySQL module from Puppet Forge. Alright, let me just clear my terminal and now I will install PHP modules. For that, I'll type puppet module install -php version, that is 4.0.0 beta 1, and here we go. So it is done now. That means we have successfully installed two modules. One is PHP, another is MySQL. Alright, let me show you where it is present in my machine. So what I'll do, I'll just hit an ls command and I'll show you in Puppet modules, and here we go. So as you can see that there's a MySQL module and PHP module that we have just downloaded from Puppet Forge. Now what I need to do is I have defined MySQL and PHP class, but I need to declare that in the site.bp file present in the Puppet manifest. So for that, what I'll do, I'll first use the gedit editor. You can use whatever editor that you want. I'm saying it again and again, but you can use whatever editor that you want. I personally prefer gedit. And now manifest site.pp, and here we go. Now, as I've told you earlier as well, I like my screen to be clean and nice, so I'll just remove this. And over here, I will just declare the two classes, that is MySQL and PHP. Include MySQL. Server, and in the next line I'll include the PHP class. So for that I'll type PHP, just save it, now close it. Let me clear my terminal. Now what I'll do, I'll go to my Puppet agent, and from there I'll hit a command Puppet agent -t that will pull the configurations from Puppet master. So let us just proceed with that. Let me first clear my terminal, and now I'll type Puppet agent -t, and here we go. So we have successfully deployed PHP and MySQL using Puppet. Alright, let me just clear my terminal, and I'll just confirm it by typing MySQL -v. Alright, so this will display the version. Now I'll just exit from here, and now I'll show you the PHP version. So for that I'll type PHP -version, and here we go. Alright, so this means that we have successfully installed PHP and MySQL using Puppet. So now let me just give you a quick recap of what we have discussed till now. Alright, so first we saw why we need configuration management. What were the various problems that were there before configuration management, and we understood the importance of configuration management with a use case of New York Stock Exchange. Alright, after that we saw what exactly configuration management is, and we understood a very important concept called infrastructure as code. Then we focused on various type of configuration management approaches, namely push and pull. Then we saw various configuration management tools, namely Puppet, Chef, Ansible, and SaltStack. And after that we focused on Puppet, and we saw what exactly Puppet is, its master-slave architecture, how Puppet master and slave communicates, all those things. Then we understood the Puppet code basics. We understood what are resources, what are classes, manifests, modules. And finally, in our hands-on part, I told you how to deploy PHP and MySQL using Puppet. So any doubts, any questions, please guys ask, write it down in your chat box. Alright, so Sebastian has a question. He's asking what is the difference between Puppet and Chef, and both of them uses the pull configuration. Alright, it's a very good question, Sebastian. Now, let me tell you what happens. When you see the functionality of both the tools, it is pretty much similar. Alright, but when you compare the architecture, Chef has an extra component called Workstation. Although both of them have the master-slave architecture, but Chef has one extra component called Workstation. In that workstation, whatever configurations are there will be first tested in that workstation, and then it will be pushed into the server, the Chef server. Alright, and from there the clients will pull the configuration from the Chef server. So the basic difference in the architecture is that Chef has one extra component called Workstation. So I hope this answers your question. And I would also like to add that since Chef is mostly used to provision infrastructure on cloud, because it is compatible with almost all the major cloud platform providers like Amazon, AWS, Azure, etc. So any other questions, any other doubts, guys, you can ask me right now. Or if you are fine with it, I'll move forward. So any other questions, any other doubts, you can ask me right now. All right. So Jessica says the session was amazing. Thank you, Jessica. I'm glad that you find it interesting. Janice says the session was good. Thank you, Janice. Ajay says no question. Sebastian says no question. And so does Devon. Devon also has no questions. Fine, cool guys. Thanks for the confirmation. And let me tell you, you were a lovely audience. I really enjoyed giving today's session. Now this video will be uploaded into your LMS. So you can go through it. And after that, if you have any doubts, you can ask our 24/7 support team. Or you can bring those doubts in the next session. And do provide us with your important feedback, because that helps us to improve the quality of education that we provide. Thank you and have a great day.
I hope you enjoyed listening to this video. Please be kind enough to like it, and you can comment any of your doubts and queries, and we will reply to them at the earliest. Do look out for more videos in our playlist and subscribe to our Edureka channel to learn more. Happy learning!